Greetings, everyone. It's Jasmine Dominique here, and today is a wonderful day to live beyond the limits because the limits are merely illusions. Today, I want to talk about abundance. I want to talk about the power of abundance. I want to talk about the purpose of abundance, and I want to talk about what it is that can hinder us from fully embracing abundance and living freely in abundance, because it is a gift that has been given to us all when we choose to accept it. I'd like to share a little bit of a personal story with you. When I moved back to the United States about 2 years ago, after being away for 2 years in Brazil, I began to crave energy that was created during my childhood. I really desired to reconnect with my childhood because reconnecting with my childhood helps me to stay humble and grounded. But I also knew that there were some open wounds that were created during my childhood that needed some love and attention and healing. So I began to look for my childhood home, and I searched and searched and searched for a very long time, and I couldn't find it. So I decided to surrender. I surrendered. And after a year, I have found my childhood home. A couple of weeks ago, I dropped a friend off at home, and on my way to this person's home, I could just feel the energy of the neighborhood that we were in. There was something about this neighborhood that sparked a feeling in me that I hadn't felt in a very long time. And I knew that I needed to be in that place at that time. So I dropped the person off at home, and I began to drive around the neighborhood, and eventually I found the childhood store. I found the store that I used to go to with my mother very frequently. I went inside of the store and it came to me. I remembered the exact moments, the time frame that I visited that store frequently with my mother. And all of these memories from my childhood began to surface. And you all, it felt so good. Oh my gosh, I felt like a little girl again. I was a little girl again, and my inner child was so happy. I left the store and I continued to drive around the neighborhood. As I drove around the neighborhood, I entered into a smaller subdivision, and I found my childhood home. I found my childhood home. And this was the childhood home that my mother and I lived in for about 4 years, between the ages for me of 10 and 14. And during this time, oh my gosh, so many of my perceptions of the world were created. And I knew that I found the home when I was supposed to find the home. When I was looking for the home before, I was not ready mentally or emotionally or spiritually or physically. I was not ready. I knew that reconnecting with the memories from this home, the energy of this home, meant that I would have to travel back to my childhood during some not so pleasant times because I experienced a lot of trauma when I lived in this home. So I knew that I had found it at the right time, and I began to meditate on the purpose of me finding the home. And the word poverty continued to come to surface for me. I kept hearing the word poverty, 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 and it made so much sense because I was raised in a single parent household. And during this time, my mother, she worked really, really, really hard to provide financial stability in the best way that she could for us. And so she would work from sun up beyond sundown to provide, and I witnessed this. And so number one, I developed the mindset that in order to be financially stable, one had to work beyond the point of exhaustion. I believe that one had to struggle. I believe that one had to wrestle because my mother was very stressed a lot of the times. You know, you can imagine working constantly without a breather or a break, and still not receiving what it is you deserve. I can only imagine that that's very stressful. I have experienced that. And so I realized that at that time, or I believed at that time, that one had to fight and to struggle in order to be okay. And I also began to embrace poverty in the sense that I believe that there had to be an imbalance. When one is abundant, one is abundant mentally, one is abundant relationally, one is abundant financially, one is abundant spiritually. That is the definition of abundance to me. Abundant in every single aspect, in every aspect. And I realized at that time that didn't exist. That's what I thought. Relationally, I could see the imbalance between my mother and my father. And so relationally, I created a mindset that was rooted in poverty. Financially, I believed that my mother had to work strenuous hours, doing very strenuous jobs, and still not receiving what it is she deserved financially. So my mindset of poverty was developed. Spiritually, we didn't really have a connection. I didn't know that spirituality existed. I didn't see that. And so I became impoverished spiritually because I didn't know how to feed my heart or how to feed my spirit. My mother didn't have the time to give that to me or to show me that. So all of these mindsets centered around poverty began to develop, and they continue to develop into my adulthood. And as I began to think about this word poverty more and more, I observed my lineage as much as I could. And I went back as far as 3 generations ago, and I could see how a mindset centered around poverty was developed even then. You know, my mother was only showing me what she knew. My mother was only operating in the sense that she knew. My mother was only vibrating. She was only vibrating on the level that she could vibrate because of what she believed, based on a lot of the generational patterns that had been fed to her. And so I could see the generational connection between why I believed certain things that I believed. And there's always that one person, and something is telling me that that person is you. There's always that person in a family that begins to observe generational patterns. And they feel that there's something different, that things could be different about certain generational practices that have occurred for many years. And this person connects with the God-like frequency, the universal frequency, the Holy Spirit frequency, whatever you want to call it. It's that high vibrational frequency that introduces us to our higher selves and everything that we can be, which is limitless. And when this person connects with that space, they begin to see the world very differently. And certain mindsets that they held on to or were imprisoned by for a very long time, they begin to fall apart. And they begin to change the generational flow within their lineage. And again, something tells me that that person may be you. And I wanted to bring up the generational aspect because we store so much genetically. So much has been stored in our DNA. Patterns and belief systems are stored in our DNA. And we continue to project that into our physical world. We project what is stored in our DNA into the physical world. Our world is a creation of what it is that we are, or what we have created in our mind. We store it so many times until we realize that there's something different. And then we begin to change the structure of our DNA. We're so powerful. And we begin to change generational patterns and beliefs that prevents us from operating in our most highest self, our most high vibrational selves. We begin to change our DNA so that we begin to change what it is we are projecting or creating physically. It's beyond a physical sense. And I know I'm going super, super deep right now, but I feel like I need to. It's time to go beyond the physical It's time to go deeper into the spirit, and it's time for us to remember how abundant we truly are. And in order to remember how abundant we truly are, we first have to take responsibility for ourselves and what it is that we have creating, but we also have to take responsibility for what our ancestors created. And then know that we have the ability, because we are naturally abundant beings, to change what is not operating in abundance. And I truly believe that our ancestors, they want this for us. They want us to have these revelations and realizations that they were the examples for us. They showed us positive aspects and negative aspects. They were the examples for us so that we could see that we also have the ability to change and to evolve and to do things differently if we choose to. And the powers that be, the people who call themselves the powers that be, that own a lot of what has been created in the physical realm, they like for people to operate in a mindset of poverty, whether that be emotional, physical, spiritual. They like for people to operate in a mindset of poverty, because when a person operates in a mindset of poverty, they don't realize how powerful they are. They don't realize how much they are loved. They don't realize that they are limitless beings that can create when they choose to create whatever it is that they want to create. If every human being walking this planet was fully aware of that, we wouldn't have people in places of power and control. Those people would lose their positions. They wouldn't be needed anymore, because everyone would know that they have the ability to be and to create what it is they want to create. And so those who have deemed themselves as being those in positions of power, those who make people believe, because people choose to believe, that they are in positions of power, they don't want people to embrace abundance. And so many things, illusions have been created in our world, so that people forget who they really are. Food, entertainment, the list goes on and on. But we're remembering. So this is part 1 of this blog. I'll revisit it very soon, so stay tuned. Love and light. Peace.